Great work, Arne. This score and the presentation, the mock-up and everything that goes with it, it was very, very well done. I thought that you manipulated the parameters of the mock-up in a very realistic way. I thought a lot of the choices here in terms of instrumentation and coloration and proportion, all that stuff is very nicely worked out. So, even the harp scoring is really, really well done. Of course, I don't mean that as a knock on previous harp scoring attempts. About the only thing that I would say here is I realize that this score has been adjusted a little bit because of concern of vertical height, but really, on the first page, it would be nice to see all of the instruments. So that's all right. I mean, we can really see here we've got pretty much a full complement of brass, and 4, 3, 3, 1 brass, and so on, and winds with the standard triple winds with the standard auxiliaries and so on, harp, piano, and a very nice battery of percussion. And it's really nice the way the harp is used in just to accent little bits and pieces. It has a touch of Nights in the Gardens of Spain in it, but not slavishly so. It really is using the piano more in the kind of Russian style or early 20th century American style. So let's start right in with the website entry evaluation criteria. I'm more going to be commenting on what you got right and make a few suggestions about possible things you might want to alter, and leave it at that, because there really isn't a whole lot to fix. So starting off from the beginning, I think we can set aside the concern about pitch weight being stuck in the upper middle register of the piano. You really are broadening the scope of the orchestra. That's really nice. The question about thematic material repeating often, possibly sounding repetitive if orchestrated exactly the same way throughout. Well, you do orchestrate things very similarly in some ways, but different in others, right? So we've got some of the same pizzicato happening. I think you should really be clear whether or not it's the same as before, right? You say simile here, and I think that after this tacit, you should just go up, down, simile, right? Anyway. All right, so so it's different enough, right? There's some really similar things, for instance, you're tweeting up to this this G sharp right here, and then we've got the piccolo playing the same thing an octave higher, right? So there's resonances, and of course we've got some of the same elements here, but trading off. It's really, really fun. So let's talk a little bit about how all of this is put together. I really love the really hard-nosed A2 oboes and the clarinets playing harmony right under them. And then, of course, you've got at an octave higher, we've got A2 flutes. So that's a really nice stack there. Then here we've got the horns hammering away at B. And what's great is that you don't bother even putting any kind of wind instruments over that B, right? You just let it sit in the horns and the C trumpet. And that's good enough. And then you have this pizzicato, and here's an example of what I mean when I keep telling people, don't mark an upward roll unless you have a downward roll, right? So here we've got 3 ups and a down, or 4 ups and a down, right? And and then you say sim here. I mean, it's the thing is you kind of you've got a tacit here, and then you've got separated ones. So I think you should try and kind of show the pattern again. So just up and then sim, and then you've got your down and so on. I really love that sort of back and forth quality. It's really nice, and you have some fairly manageable triple stops right in here, quadruple stops. And that is, that is all working together. And you also have a balance here. I would say fortissimo on your violins, not forte. So fortissimo violins, forte brass, and then fortissimo wind. So I think that would make a good balance there. Now here you've got this kind of it's a sort of like a salzedo technique of just kind of like they're really really short, tiny little glissandos that rip towards each other. So you got this rip, 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 and then opposite directions, right? So rip, 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 opposite. Yeah, and then you say damp. The thing is that nobody's really going to be able, like with this pizzicato and everything else going on, nobody's really going to be able to hear the harp, whether it's damped or not. But I think all you need to do is just mark the first one, and then the harpist will kind of get the idea that they are to damp afterwards, right? So this is something that I think could be heard fairly well, just because you're leaving some open space in there. Now, how to make it sound even more audible would be to take it up an octave, right? So then it would be really, really clear. As it is, the pizzicato is going to swallow some of it, and the horns are going to get the rest. But you still get the sense of ripple, right? So you won't really get much in terms of harp tone, but you will get some ripple right in there. Now here, before I move on, let me just get back to this. Dun. So look, you don't really have to think of this as a 5-note pattern. Dun, right? Dun. It doesn't have to end on a B. It can just go dun, and then let the next phrase start. We got bum 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 dun. You don't. It doesn't have to necessarily tie together or lead to the next B, right? Like you've got it here. Right. So it's just like it's really kind of you're sort of absolutely forcing us to think of this as something that this little riff as something that ends, rather than being its kind of independent, kind of being a kind of an independent little fragment of a motive, right? And yeah, so then in here we've got this kind of and just kind of trading off back and forth inside, and I think that that's really powerful as well. It's very cool, and this held B, and we have kind of like a similar strategy, but it's not quite as strong. The dun 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 dun. You've got A2 clarinets and trumpets, and this is really kind of high. You really this is just blasting. So you're saying forte on top, mezzo forte below. So it's really going to sound more almost fortissimo like, right? It's just really going to just blast away right up there. So, I just feel that you need just a little bit more reinforcement here of other elements, right? Because it just really will become all about the trumpet right in here. So if you could add an octave with a piccolo, say, or if there's some other kind of maybe strings, if there was an available string player to double that arco, that maybe that would work, or maybe have the piano help out somehow. But it's just screamingly high, right? Going all the way up to high C there. But I mean, it doesn't mean it won't work. So don't get me wrong. Like I'll really point out something that I feel doesn't work. But so far, it'll work. It's just are the proportions right here? And I love this kind of rip downwards in the oboes and the piano. And here you're going opposite directions, right? Contrary motion. But here it's in the same direction. It's kind of fun. Okay, so let's take a look at the next evaluation criteria concerns. Melodic development soaring quite high, accompaniment figures covering a wide range. So here it's not a problem because you're sort of putting the the accompaniment figures over the xylophone. Just a little touch here in terms of the violins, playing some triple stop in there, pizzicato, and just a little bit of emphasis on that B from bass clarinet and from trumpet. So I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, it's the same note essentially. I think you should just mark. I think you should just have the trumpet mezzo forte, but you should have your other elements forte, because I think that the bass clarinet just cannot compete with just even a mezzo forte trumpet right in there will blast it out of the water. Okay, and it's interesting, as far as the melodic development is concerned, you actually keep it fairly low, and this is one place in which I'm not quite sure that there will be a carryover, right? And then much softer English horn, dun 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 dun, right? So if you push your second trumpet up to A, a very, very loud A right in there, then I feel that, like, the fall off here is so obvious, right? It is so pronounced how much weaker the violas and the English horn are going to be without the trumpet still involved, and also first bassoon just suddenly dropping off into nothing, right? So I think this might be something, once again, is there some way of continuing on the thematic material without having such a strong drop off? Maybe you don't need to push right in here. Maybe don't even have any kind of crescendo or fortissimo mark. Just allow the line to brighten itself up as it rises, right? And then come in really strong with the other instruments. So I just feel that the trade-off doesn't add up. It's sort of like it's kind of like following, like being in a vaudeville show or being in a comedy act or something like that, and having, or let's say a comedy act. So we have Robin Williams come on first, and then you have like a guy who just started out being a comedian following him, right? It doesn't follow through very well or as powerfully. Okay, and then right in here, the whole accompaniment figure concept. We've got bassoons working together with these arco strings and other little elements and so on of percussion and tuba and so on. So I feel that works pretty well. And here you got the strings working with the flutes. If you really want to make the second line powerful, you'll give it to a clarinet or some other instrument rather than to the second flute, right? Because the second flute, it can be strong, but it can't be all that strong when it's doubling the second violins. And it's not a very complex texture. That is very true, but it doesn't really, it doesn't have as much force as, say, like oboe or clarinet would right in that, covering that same exact orchestral register. That's really nice, that little trill, right? And yeah, so all of this works pretty well. I like the measured tremolo there. It's pretty fierce. Okay, so everything is really great when you get up to here, except for trying to turn the downbeat here into part of the rhythmic phrasing of the whole bar, right? Because what's going on here is everything ends on the downbeat. Right, so that's the end, and then 2 3 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1. Right, so if we go 1 2 3 1 2 and 3 and 1 2 and 3, and we're kind of like almost forcing the rhythmic phrasing back a beat, and it just doesn't feel as natural anymore. It feels a little too regular, right? As opposed to this minuet kind of pacing. So yeah, so maybe you could hold back on, like, just let the music come to an end and then come in strong with the brass on the second beat, right? And the same thing with these octaves. And yeah, the harp glissando here, see exactly the right way to do it, right? Check that out, folks. So he's just got a line from the beginning note to the end note with a diagram. That's all the harpist needs. They don't need you to write out the first 7 pitches at all. Okay, and this is nicely scored. I like the idea of really kind of throwing it to the to your trumpets and so on, and having really a nice a nice top note there, that a really prominent E, which has gotten buried in quite a few interpretations. It's hard to see where the melody was right in here. And then, this all works pretty well, right? Once again, second voice of the flutes it's just easier or clearer in, say, clarinet or oboe, in terms of just trying to match the strength, right, of the second line or the second violin line. This is all really neat right in here. Just like all the things that you add make the score more powerful. And then, normally in a case like this, I would challenge you a little bit and say, do you really want to pace every beat? Da 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 da. Da 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 da. This is a place that I have likened to a runaway child, right? And you don't know how far they're going, and they're running down the street, and you don't know when you're going to be able to grab them before they get into trouble, right? So if you pace every single one, we can kind of tell how far that kid is going. Okay, that's one square of sidewalk, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, right? So it's just like we really can kind of predict. However, I would say that adding the piano in there kind of almost demands that you support it, right? So I'm not going to. This will be a case where I would say it's fine. Like aesthetically, I feel that it works really, really well. And I like the flute working with the oboe and so on. And I feel that just so long as things aren't too strong here, then the flute will be fine. However, first flute is not strong enough, right? This should go to A2, right? If you want this to not disappear, right in here, how low the flute gets here. And of course, the xylophone will absorb a lot of what the flute's doing too, but it will still more or less work. And I really love the trumpet coming in here. And just really nicely scored right in here. Very good match. Timpani, xylophone, and strings with a little bit of bassoon support on below. I think that works really great. And then here you have the full range. Right here we're getting into section B. And so the concerns here are contrast of color, breadth of texture, and middle register scoring. And since you have a very wide scope and you do lots of little experimental things with it, then that's totally fine. Maintaining differentiated roles and closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, highlighting inner voices, and so on. I think you do that fine. So as far as like those little E's, keeping high interjecting notes from sounding too glaringly repetitive, I think you work those into the texture like almost imperceptibly, right? Now here I don't know if you really need to mark that this is going to be the fourth string. Yes, technically the D could be an open string, but I would, as a sort of bargain basement concert master, or junior high school concert master, I would play this on the fourth string regardless, so I wouldn't need this warning right in here. Okay. All right, and then moving on. Yeah, and then like the second coming in and the staccatissimo strings right in here. It's just really nice. And bum bum ba da 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 da, and the trombone. I think that's something that I did as well. I may have used the trombone for this particular little motive. Yeah, and that works great with the tuba on the bottom and so on. Yeah, so nicely done there. And then clarinet first clarinet responds. You go, all right, so here you're sort of compromise, right? So what is going on here? The end of this line is actually the triplet, right? So right is what's going on here, not da 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 da. That's not actually where the line goes. If you look in the score, it's really deceptive because you can see in the piano score that the right hand seems to end on the B, but the actual the direction of the line is going for the triplet, right? So the B is the entrance of the melody, right? So this sounding B, I know it's written C sharp, but sounding B. But I mean, so long as you are scoring both in clarinet, then I guess it's fine, right? I just miss the continuity of the line. Then you're doubling it with bassoon and so on. That all works great. So that's taking us to the next section where the concerns are keeping triplets from overwhelming the melodic line above, watching out for those widely spaced left-hand patterns, and so on. And you change things around so much. Like you have this big flurry right in here. It's great. It is very La Valse or Rhapsody Espagnole is what it reminds me of. So yeah, so fun. And then the piano coming in here, chunka 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 chunka. That's really, really fun. So you realize a lot of pianists will roll this, right, as much as they can because their hands are too small. In fact, Alicia de la Rocha, who is whose version of this piece is considered to be the standard. She had one of the smallest reaches of any concert pianist, and she was still able to play huge things, just, from sheer determination, if nothing else. She had a lot of, not cheats, but just ways of moving her hands around and breaking chords slightly to allow her to play really big things. Yeah, and then just really, really fun. The timpani right in here, and the way that this all works together. You just go back and listen to it in the mock-up. It's very, very nicely done. The trill and the horn trills are always so fun, and the use of lower trumpets enclosed by trombones, and just so many really great ideas right in here. And to a certain degree, it's really the triplets that are slightly in trouble here. If there was any way of the triplets being more supported, I would support that. That sounds weird. But yeah, I think the triplets need to be more prominent going into this section. There has to be some kind of way of supporting them. Okay, so I am not a huge fan of this right here. This da-da, da-dum. There's absolutely nothing. There is... In no way is the bassoonist incapable of going da-da-dum, right? And I know you want to hold on to this B, right? And then lucky for you, you double this right in here, else I would say, I think you need to rewrite this. So, if you really just determined on having those incomplete triplets, then fine. But I feel that this is a stronger approach right in here. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum. I like the way that you alter this right in there. It's very, very cool. But then right in here when it, we're starting to you're sort of throwing in the completion of it as a castanet note, and I just feel that cutting the nose off of the triplet is not the greatest move. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of it, and it just doesn't quite push my buttons. I think that the tension of the idea, yada-da, da-da-dum. I think that it's almost like a flamenco gesture, right, with the hands or something like that, or like with the body, da-da-dum, and da-da, 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 da-da. What is that, right? I think that da-da-dum, da-da-dum is just, it just has more potency. So you get away with it here, but then here I'm just not quite so convinced. Right, and then, I think just like flutes doubled by bass clarinet. I mean, it sort of barely works, right? I would not mark my piano, mezzo piano, with in a way that it would interfere with A2 flutes playing in their lowest registers piano, right? So you might need to rethink the balance right in here. And then here you have the bass clarinet sort of surging, right? And it'll basically just, what will you be able to hear the flutes right in here? I don't think so, right? So maybe they're not needed at all. Maybe all you need in there is just the bass clarinet line. And since you have that pitch doubled already by first violins, but I mean, look, you could leave it in, but I just have my doubts, right? Okay. But right in here, this is so cool. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. So nice. I don't know why this needs to be F flat in here. I mean, I guess like you want to avoid playing the E twice. Yeah, I think it works with even without going enharmonic. But yeah, this sort of this gives us our nose back in terms of the triplets. Yeah. I want your score to be beautiful, Arne. That's like, I'm obsessing over how can it really really ring. How can it really authentically grasp the music even more than it has. So obviously no problem in terms of keeping textural contours fresh and not too much the same. I think you accomplish that. You have beautiful variation throughout the B part, and thanks for that C right before the double bar. About the only thing that I would think here is, okay, there's two things. All right, one is something that I have been mentioning, and I'm sure that you're expecting me to say this, so I'll say it, and that is that at the beginning of C, there is a pedal mark in the piano part, and therefore every pitch as the melody rises throughout the registers of the piano is going to be sustained to the end of the bar. Now, some of these pitches you do sustain in other instruments like bassoon and so on, and double bass, and to a certain degree you would assume that harp would do some of the sustaining for you. But it's just not, I don't think that it really sustains enough. I think all the pitches need to sustain to some degree to really get the same effect as the piano. And then like the other part is that like starting off here with nice strong harp and soft horns is great, but then by the time you pushed to this forte, by the time you get to mezzo forte right in here, nobody can hear the harp, right? So the harp is just not built, like even if you were to go crescendo to fortissimo, I think that the horns would still bury the harp there. So maybe there's a different way of expressing this if you just absolutely have to have harp there. But yeah, I don't think that this is going to work great, and this is going to work great. But the fact that the horns are pushing to forte here, and to all intents and purposes, they are playing like A4, right? And then here it's A3 plus the B on the bottom, and then things start to separate more. But yeah, it's a lot. And then piano subito, that's great. That fits everything really, really well. Okay. Now I think I have a gripe about some of these things. All right, and it's not fatal or anything. It's just a real warning. So here you have this da 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 da. You know what I would try to do here is to come back to the downbeat every once in a while, or maybe every bar. So da 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 da. Just because it's really hard for the player to like Like when they know that they've got a downbeat coming, they kind of pace themselves against it. Whereas what you've got here is just kind of like that Berlioz thing where it just goes, da 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 da. It's just like the pacing becomes hard. Like the players can start to slowly shift towards the onbeat rather than the offbeat. With just as things go on and on and on and on and on, right? And yeah, you're giving them the timpani to pace against, but it's very, very soft. It'll be way softer than the strings all playing together. So I think that if you just give them the occasional downbeat, like once per bar, would be enough, right? So that they can just really, they can figure out, they can feel where the downbeat is, and it won't hurt the music at all. Okay, so doppio più lento ma sempre mosso, right? So, okay, so I feel like if the original tempo, let's flick back here, was 60, right? So that is kind of the equivalent of 180, right? Okay, and then we're going half as fast. Half as fast would be 90 to the quarter, right? So here you have 86. So like this would be more like ma sempre meno, right? So you're actually playing slower than you should be. Mosso would be more like 100, which is what I put in the why am I keep blanking out on the word template. So yeah, so just keeping in mind that tempo that is set up by the pianists, right? I feel that it's very workable for, or at least the proportions of tempo, not the exact tempo, but the proportions of tempo are very workable for the orchestra. Just taking everything down a hair, but maybe not down this far. And I kind of just like thinking about all of this and the beautiful scoring of the harp and everything else and the balance that you are working on here. Couldn't the oboe be playing piano espressivo with lots of nuances and hairpins and really bringing things out? Couldn't it be possible, rather than just getting rid of the tenuto marks and sticking a slur over it, couldn't it be possible to have both, right? So you have portato here. Da 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 da. That sounds very Spanish, right? And then throw in the nuances. Start off piano, da, and then crescendo, da, diminuendo, dum, and then diminuendo, crescendo, diminuendo, da, dum, and same thing again. Da 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 dum bum 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 bum. Right, just really guide your soloist through that phrase and just really give them all the nuances, right? You can use the ones that I just sang or just make up your own, right? See, like here, you add some more, right? I mean, more or less based on what's in the score, but like you could be doing even more, right? So yeah, and just nice subtle horn scoring below. It's really nice. And just, yeah, see, so like, I feel that you don't need to be forte espressivo. You can be piano espressivo. The player will understand, and since they're marked solo, they'll play over the rest of the orchestra. So I don't think it needs to be quite such a big contrast between the two. And then, here, this is nice. Yeah, I just really love the way that you contrast the two different parts. They have different accompaniment styles, and not only that, you vary some of your voices in the accompaniment, so that keeps it from becoming too regular and too predictable, and especially also adding harp and so on, little touches of horn. So that's really well done. And then you get to hear bum 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 bum. I mean, do the cellos and double basses need to just keep going? right? Could they be doubling some of what's going on here in the bassoons and clarinets just to make it really exciting and just to build up to this? You know, do you know what I mean? As opposed to just kind of just sort of playing slower notes and offbeat notes and so on. Yeah, I love this rise that right in here though. Okay. Yeah, and then flutes. Yeah, so how come the flutes are they just yeah. So I mean, I think you could give your strings a lot more love in terms of nuances and so on. You know, da 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 dum, da dum. Could you have a little crescendo in here? And this is kind of neat. I like the way that you are like working out the bowing right in here. You know, down, up, down. Yeah, that works all really, really nicely. And I like the way you have like there's a bit of influence from the perhaps from the template and perhaps just from your own observation, right? I think the accelerando doesn't really happen in the piano parts till right here, but if you want to start a little earlier, that's fine. Right? This is just all lovely right in here. Just a little doubling from oboe right in there, and this little dive down here in clarinet, and like sort of echoing what happened in the harp and so on. What if instead of rallentando you went to rubato here, right? So that would allow the players and the conductor to sort of have very exaggerated dramatic gestures instead of just slowing down and slowing down and slowing down, right? Slight fermata. Don't put in the rallentando yet. Right? Isn't that what happens in the piano score? Like there's actually an accelerando, and then dun 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 dun. Yeah, and once again, I feel this is fourth string, like giving us a Sul G here is not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could play that in first position on the D string, but I wouldn't. I would play it on the G string. But yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, this is all fine. Just so long as you keep it soft, right? I just am dubious here about the role of the harp right in here when you've got trombones playing at the same time. Right, and here you have mezzo forte, diminuendo, and you have mezzo forte in your horns and trombones. Guess who wins this fight? It's the trombones easy. Like practically nobody will even hear the harp at all, right? So if you want the harp to have a greater role here, it has to be marked forte. And I would say possibly even just don't do a diminuendo till the end of the phrase. And the trombones would have to be playing like piano or something, or mezzo piano. So that would be how to balance that. Okay, so this is a little odd right in here. Okay, you have a slur over tenuto staccato. All right, so it kind of goes against it, right? So tenuto staccatos do not need to be slurred, right? Because their articulation style is unga, right? So you have the ung of the tenuto, and you have the nga of this staccato, of this sort of like a sticky staccato. It's like tenuto staccato. Like if you want to know how tenuto staccato works, just take some Scotch tape or sticky tape or something, masking tape, and put it, sort of put it on a tabletop with one hand just holding it down very, very flat so it won't move, and then basically tapping it and pulling your finger off, putting your finger on, pulling it off, and so on, over and over again. And that is the essence of the tenuto staccato articulation, right? It is a sticky staccato. It's a more emphatic kind of mezzo staccato, right? So if you have, like, in that case, like if you didn't have the tenuto marks and you just had a staccato, a slurred staccato, that would be a mezzo staccato, right? And it's a sort of almost like a light portato. I sound like I'm a wine connoisseur here. But yeah, but you don't need the slur when you're going unga, 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 because they're separated, right? They're each going to be separately articulated rather than, than essentially slurred through, right? Okay, all right. So that was, here endeth the lesson. All right, so now let's go on with the evaluation. And this is all really fun. Yeah. Yeah, really, really nice. And then the ritardando here at the end. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that, I love that sort of that blazing D octaves right in here. Okay, so with third and first. All right. Okay. Yeah, nice. Yep. Okay, that all works for me. All right, so continuing on. So here we're getting to a place where I have cautioned in my list of criteria that you need to maintain a rather hallucinatory feeling of the music, despite the fairly straightforward building blocks of the tutti. So, yeah, so I really like the way that you've scored this out, and I think that this will work really nicely, just as long as everybody really, really plays the dynamic that you have scored for them, right? So piano, flutes, pianissimo clarinets, and bass clarinet, right? And yeah, and then you crescendo into this, and right, and then you just notch everything up a little bit, bum bum bum. Right, and then here you're giving somebody an optional B there in case they don't have their B foot. Da, 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 da. Yeah, and then doubling the flute with the bass clarinet. That's really, really a nice effect. And then when you get to here, you basically just give up on the flutes because you're getting to stronger dynamics. I think that that's very wise. And of course, just as soon as you add the horn in there, you're just creating more problems. Yeah, really very high trombone scoring right in there. I mean, that'll all work. It'll be very, very bright. Very, very much pushing through the fabric. If you want this note to be more in control, better to give it to, like, your first trumpet player or something like that. And then you can just, like, let your trombone take over here on this C and so on. Yeah, I mean, it's totally playable. It's really penetrating. It's very similar to sending your horns up to a very, very high, like F or G or something like that. Or A. So it's just extremely bright. And it's kind of strange, like you got fortissimo in your winds and strings, but you have like mezzo piano in your and these percussion. So it's a little strange. Anyways, yeah, and then like the pianist doing these scales. It's so fun. Yeah, it just really feels like Nights in the Gardens of Spain here. Yeah, and this dun 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 dun. So yeah, it's just so great. Okay. All right, so you probably have heard me preach the news about this. Okay. Bum 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 bum. I think you can start your rallentando over here, so that just these whole this whole duo of bars can just really, dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? It can just really be more emphatic as opposed to just starting right in here. Okay, and then when you get to here, what if everybody just plays an eighth note, which is very, very separated from what follows it, and you put in just a little bit of a pausa, or a pause, or a comma, so that this massive stroke here, massive stroke, I'm sounding like a clinician here. All right, and if you go up to triple F, nobody's going to hear anything. Just go up to F or forte or fortissimo. So having everybody end with an eighth note, then having a comma right after the eighth note, and then just, having your cellos hit this, your cellos and violas hit this low C, skip that, and then just start right together on beat 1.5 with the F sharp right in here. Yeah, just because, like, what's going to happen if you don't do that is that the massive sound, especially of the bass drum and the timpani and the tuba and bass trombone and so on, like just contrabassoon hitting this low A, all of it put together is going to be this big, massive reverb kind of a boom in the hall, right? So how long do you think it takes for that boom to subside? However long it takes for that boom to subside is where the conductor should place the next pitch, right? The next half beat. Bum, 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 bum. Right? So there just needs to be a little bit of a gap there, rather than just jumping straight into it, like dun 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 dun. It's like by the time the reverb dies out, you'll be right about here, right? And so we're missing all of the kind of intricate calculations that you put into the music to make it work. Okay, now pushing your horns, your stopped horns, subito to fortissimo. What's going on with the pattern? How can we hear anything in here, right? So I think that everybody needs to share in that crescendo, or else the horns will just bury everybody. This is cool. So all right, so at the tempo that you're going here, it's just too fast to do more than measured tremolo on the 16th note, rather than unmeasured tremolo on eighth notes. Just imagine trying to bow that. That just sort of like kind of a tremolo. I mean, here I am just like singing it, and I'm practically going like with my kind of broken vocalizations. Okay. Yeah, and it's just a matter of taste. If this is what you want to do there, go ahead and do that there. It might be a bit much. I think that the music is making the point well enough right here without having to add the harp, but that's just me. And then back to yeah, and once again, I just feel like it's enough to have a measured tremolo, so just a single beam rather than a double. Now, if this were intended to be sixteenths, then you have one too many tremolo beams. All right, and this is so cool, sending the clarinet all the way up to there, and yeah, so neat. Yeah, and then this is one of the smoothest transitions going into section E. Yeah, it's so great in here. So now, once again, what I'm going to say is, why don't you just ease back on everybody? Okay, just take everything back to very soft. Just take everything down to like to piano, right? Just have everything just kind of, because like you've already got. You don't really need the dynamic fluctuations, because you've already got the fluctuations of color easing in and out. This is one of the coolest interpretations of the rotating patterns, right? You're just throwing them back and forth between different groups of instruments. So convincing, so beautiful right in here. So there's absolutely no need for the clarinet to be forte espressivo with a trumpet being mezzo forte espressivo. What if they were both piano espressivo, right? And you just allowed the clarinet to sort of lazily buzz along in there rather than being really emphatic, right? Which is what it would be like with forte espressivo. It's just really, has this kind of cold, straight tone. And, and what if you put in put in more nuances, right? So, like from piano, you have this big, beautiful world. Piano is this big space that in which just the smallest nuance can bring a warmth of color. All right, here you've got portato, but why don't you have it for the clarinet? Maybe this was an oversight, right? And of course, there's nothing stopping you from putting in those tenuto marks here, so that we get that beautiful pulsing kind of a sound. And nothing stopping you from putting in all kinds of little nuances that really bring out the meaning of the line right in here. Yeah, and this is just so lovely right in here. Just pushing this up like this. Oh, so cool. And then just like the little, like how the piano takes over for the harp. See, I feel that like this is a lot more balanced if the melody isn't just cranking it at mezzo forte and forte, right? Just bring everything down. Don't trust it. It's going to be fine. Bring it down. The orchestra will just murmur and flutter around the melody really beautifully. If the melody is too loud, then it's sort of fluttering in the background. But if the melody is softer, then it's interacting with those beautiful elements and yet staying in the front without being so far in the front that the landscape is way in the distance. Yeah. And this is lovely right in here. You can bring things up to a louder dynamic, but I would say don't make the bass clarinet go up to a high note and be louder than your melody instrument. Yeah, and this is nice. Yeah, just really keep everything really muffled in the horns. Keep it soft. You could even just be, I guess mezzo piano's fine. Yeah, and just like the little trill in here. Oh, it's just so enchanting. Beautifully nocturnal. Okay, and that takes us to right here. Now, right here we get to one more concern, conveying a sense of icy distance, interpreting the piano's coloration. And of course, you actually have a piano, but you just choose not to use it. Here, I would say, like, if you're going to have rolled pizzicato here, then you need the harp needs to roll as well. You cannot have the harp play non-arpeggiando here because the rolling motion of the pizzicato below, and actually just the pizzicato below at all, is going to suck up the sound of the harp, right? It's going to absorb the sound of the harp. So you need the harp to be rolled as well so that it has some kind of a chance of being heard. Yeah. I would say, like, I would mark it mezzo piano, not pianissimo. So, yeah. And, do we need to have timpani here? Couldn't we do the same thing with pizzicato double bass? All right. One thing that possible to put in here would be non-vibrato, right? Or sans nuances, right? Just keep it really, really cold. And so it's sort of like looking out on a clear moonlit night, right? And just very, very far away, you can see the revelries going on. Now you're you have gone beyond that. You had this big, beautiful, like maybe you got into a boat right around here and you floated down the river. And now you're looking back at the revelry, and just like it's just off in the distance. You can see the big bonfire. You can see the little dancing figures around it, but they're all bathed in moonlight now, right? And so everything is just completely still, right? And then a sense of intimacy. Bum, ba-da-da-dum. Your favorite person is in the boat next to you. Bum, bum, ba-da-dum. But you are alone in the night, right? Dun 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 ba-da-dum. Da-da-dum. This is really nice. Yeah. I think this is done very, very well. See, I think if you use timpani for in a lot of ways that is very similar to like maybe low harp strings or pizzicato double basses or whatever. So I would just say watch out about doing it too much. Just like using it as a as just you have got a lot of timpani in here. So maybe in places where it really is kind of like a pizzicato instrument, maybe you could just use pizzicato, right? And just give the ear a bit of a rest from the sound of the timpani from time to time. It doesn't have to be all the time. Yeah, and this is really nice. These low Bs and low sounding Bs in here. Yeah, so cool. Right. And then, this is sort of this kind of half fulfills one of my little gripes, okay? And that is the da-dum is going to last, it's going to keep going in the piano chord, right? So it'll sustain just as long as everything else. So I don't think there's any need to have it stop here, right? You could just have bum bum and then add bum. Well, this is still holding all the way to the end, and then have them all lift together. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, that is such a cool idea right in there. Touch 5 and touch 4. Very, very cool score. And yeah, I was this is my first day back from a short holiday, and I was really just going to evaluate one score, and then I started looking at this one, and I just had to continue on, and I don't know, maybe that'll give me the moxie to evaluate yet another one if my throat holds out. So yeah, like I said, this might be a shorter evaluation, but no less sincere. And it's part of the shortness of it is because there's like kind of less things that I need to sort of explain, take issue with, suggest alternate procedures and so on and so forth. Despite even 45 minutes of me sitting around talking about all the other things you could possibly do and possible things that you might not have thought of and considerations and so on and so forth, there is no doubt that this is a playable score, right? There are a few things in there that I'm trying to head off, like decisions that you might make anyways about balance and so on after you've heard it performed. But, by golly, you should try to get this performed, right? It's just a really great interpretation. And, if any of my suggestions help with your finalization of this score, if that ever happens, then that would be really awesome. I feel it's real quality work that you've got here, and I'm just really happy to evaluate it for you, Arne, and give you any kind of feedback that you might find useful. So thanks so much for the amount of work and insight and imagination that you put into this. I mean, that really honors this whole orchestration challenge when people work so hard on their scores. And I think that it really is going to be one of the highlights. And sometimes my best evaluations can be things where I really talk things out a lot with the orchestrator. But I'm hoping that people will also see a positive side to working on a score that really doesn't have that many problems, and then kind of seeing that you always will have some kind of question of finesse, right? So I still feel that there are some things that you could finesse here, and probably some things that you're already rethinking as you're looking at this and thinking, geez, maybe, maybe this should be played on clarinet, not oboe, or you might have any number of different things that occur to you. So great work. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the Patreon supporters out there, and for anybody out there in the community who is still with us, who toughs it out to the end of each of these evaluations. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that some of my suggestions to the different orchestrators in this challenge are useful to all. And with that, I will sign off on this one, and maybe I've got another evaluation in me this afternoon. So, thanks all, and I will see you very soon with yet another video in this series.